They say that everyone's got a book inside them. That sounds pretty painful to me, but even so, many people never actually get it out of them, aka write it. Why do you think that is?
I think because they think it won't be good enough. They doubt their ability to do their idea justice, and they're scared that it'll be embarrassingly terrible. But here's the truth. Even if it's bad, you should write it anyway.
But doesn't that just mean I'm wasting my time writing it?
That is the fear, but it may not be the case.
Hi, I'm Rose, book designer at Alkira Publishing.
And I'm Tahlia, the managing editor. Together, we share honest conversations to guide you on your writing journey.
So why do you say you should write the book even if it's bad?
Because I know this from my personal experience.
Ah, yes, your first draft of your first book was bad.
That's putting it mildly. It was truly terrible. But if I hadn't written it, I could never have rewritten it, right? And that process became the foundation of my career as a writer and an editor.
So what made you keep going when you knew it was terrible? Or was it just me telling you that it was terrible that let you know?
Ha ha. You're a very honest daughter.
You taught me well. But seriously, a lot of people would just stop there and give up.
I was just really passionate about the story. I'm an avid reader, like 6 to 8 books a month, so I figured I should be able to write.
Yeah, so you set out to learn with your characteristic stubborn focus, and it eventually led to a new career for you.
That's right. And the thing is that there are tried and true techniques that you can learn to turn a terrible first draft into a great book. So it's not an issue if you're prepared to do the study and the revision work needed to improve it.
Right. But still, many people don't ever start that first draft or don't finish it for that matter because they start it and they think it's terrible. Why do you think we put so much pressure on ourselves to be good at something right from the start?
Good question. I think because all we see are finished books. They don't realise that their favourite novels started off messy before drafts, revisions and editors shaped them.
Yeah, it is actually really reassuring hearing successful authors talk about how bad their first books were. Brandon Sanderson, for instance, has published excerpts from early drafts of his bestsellers and written blog posts of like what he didn't like in those early drafts. If you look at any book's acknowledgement section, there is a huge list of all the people that helped the author. Really, good books are not written in a vacuum, it's a process.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one author saying thanks to the beta reader who convinced her to take the book out of the recycle bin, right? So that must have been bad.
Yeah. Do you have a personal example where your messy draft really transformed through editing? I guess your first book is the biggest example.
Yeah. I mean, my first book is the most extreme example. I just learned so much from writing that book. So my later books, weren't that bad. But I've had editing clients who've brought me manuscripts that needed a lot of work, and together we've turned it into a great book. It happens all the time.
Yeah. So is it better to wait until you've got a really clear idea for your story, even if you know you need to learn how to write good?
Well, look, that's another reason that people don't get started. They want to wait until the idea is clearer, but it doesn't often become clearer for some people until you actually start writing.
So you could be waiting forever in that case.
Yeah. Clarity comes through writing. Even crazy half-baked ideas can grow into something extraordinary once you actually start, like my Diamond Peak series. I mean, what a transformation from that first draft. And I thought it was one book. It ended up being 4.
So are you saying someone should just dive in even if they don't really know where it's going?
Well, yeah, I think that's better than not starting. I mean, if you can have an idea and have it all planned out, that is best, obviously. But I think there's a point before that where you should just sit down and write. I mean, writing a book is a process, right? So you and your ideas grow. So from the initial exploration, from that, the story starts to come together.
But what about that voice that says, you'll never be good enough?
Well, I think the only real failure is believing that voice. You can hear it, but you don't have to believe it, right? I mean, if you believe it, you give it power over you. Right? The thing is that you can edit bad writing, but you can't edit a blank page. right? So write it anyway, regardless of what that voice is telling you. And maybe it'll shut up after you've written a bit. I don't know.
Well, that's easy to say, but those kinds of thoughts do just keep coming up. How do you deal with that voice other than just trying to ignore it? Because sometimes mine is just yelling at me.
Well, I have had years of meditation practice, which really helps, right? Because I know that thoughts are just thoughts, right? They just come and they go. They're not true necessarily. I can just acknowledge that they're there and just let them pass through. I mean, they're not necessarily truth. It's just your fear popping up, right? Do you want to listen to your fear? I mean, the thing is, you don't have to believe anything that comes up on your brow. It's like it's just energy rising. Let it rise, let it drop, and do your morning meditation.
Right.
Because that
For people that
trains you.
haven't done 7 years of meditation training.
Well, the first thing is to realise that thoughts are not reality. They're just thoughts about reality. They are not necessarily true, right? If you know that, it's easier to see them as just thoughts, not truth. So if my inner critic comes up, I recognise that that's what it is, and I say something like, "Hi, you're back. What fear-mongering or negative self-talk do you have for me this time?" And that approach pretty much obliterates them because you're just not taking them seriously.
I like that. Having a chat with my inner critic and they say, well, if you're not going to take me seriously, I'll just leave.
Exactly.
So should people share their messy first draft for feedback early?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. I think you should write it for yourself, free of pressure. That way no one's asking you how your book's going while you're still figuring it out. You need lots of time for the ideas to settle and clarify, time to reflect on what you've written and do a bit of rewriting. And you really don't want any pressure to have to produce anything, especially not to produce anything good.
So then when is the right time to share it?
I think you need to have done a second draft at least. But what's important is that if you feel confident that you've got the story in a state where you can present it to others. And it may need to be 3 or 4 drafts before that happens. And I would make sure that, I'd done some study on, plot and pacing and drafting and all of that before you start sharing it.
Okay, so a bad first draft can be rewritten into a good book. But what if someone can't do the rewriting needed and it just stays bad?
Well, it doesn't really matter because they've achieved something anyway, right? They've written a book, so long as they don't try and publish something that's truly terrible, right? They're still ahead because writing is about process, not the product. Having a good book at the end of the process is not necessary for you to have gained a lot from that writing process.
Right, so you'll gain a lot out of the process even if you don't end up with a good book.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, so now you're just talking about growing as a person.
Yeah, you learn things like perseverance, time management, observation skills, and you get a deeper understanding of human behaviour, and you learn the craft of writing by actually doing it.
So what's the biggest personal lesson that writing taught you?
I think that by just sticking at it and keeping on learning and applying that learning pays off in the long run.
And that first book you wrote, Lethal Inheritance, did end up with a couple of awards, didn't it?
It did, yeah. 7 rewrites and 27 rounds of edits later.
You got there.
Yeah, I was tenacious.
So even if it never gets published though, is it still worth it?
Oh, I think so. I didn't know whether that first book of mine would ever get to publication. But it didn't really matter because I had to write it anyway. I had to write it for myself. And writing is really good for your mind anyway, regardless of the outcome.
That's true. It's like a kind of brain gym.
Yeah.
Do you think writing changed you as a person?
Well, it changed my career from a teacher to an editor, so yeah. But it also made me much more aware of story in general, of how we all have a story of our lives, and all those stories are important, as are the unwritten stories in people's minds. So, they're important. They have an existence of their own, and it's important. There's value in all the stories. And actually, I think they're all worthy of being written down.
So the real point isn't just to have a finished book?
Exactly. You might think it is, but, it's the act of writing. It's the act of writing that's important. The journey is where the growth happens. And once the draft exists, you can decide whether to refine it, publish it, or simply enjoy the fact that you wrote it.
Or chuck it in the bin.
Yes. By all means, write a bad book, but don't publish a bad book.
That's a very important distinction. But how does someone know that their book is good enough to publish if they don't have brutally honest daughters or partners or beta readers?
Well, that's where you have to ask an editor. Right? Get a manuscript appraisal from someone with the experience to know if the book is worth the necessary investment to get it to print.
You can be sure an editor will be honest enough to tell you if it isn't.
Yeah. And part of being an author is being able to lay aside a book that you wrote that just never really came together. I have 3 like that sitting in an archive folder somewhere. When I got the feedback from my beta readers, I knew those books just weren't worth the investment of my time and money that would be required to make them competitive in the marketplace. So I just put them aside.
Yeah. Isn't that hard though, to take all that work and decide not to go any further with it?
Well, for me, it was a relief because it meant I could stop struggling with those books. I didn't have to make them good because no one was going to read them.
Fair enough. So to anyone watching who dreams of writing, your first draft doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't even need to be good.
Yeah, it just needs to exist. Right, so write that book anyway, even if it's bad.
Just get it out of your head. Tell us in the comments, what's the book inside of you? Does it hurt? What have you been dreaming of writing but haven't started yet?
And if you're brave enough, share the idea with us and share what's holding you back. Maybe we can help.
Thanks for watching. Here at Alkira Publishing, Tahlia and I help authors through every stage of their journey with editing, book design and publishing.
And I have a couple of books on writing to help you as well. The Elements of Active Prose and Novel Writing Mastery is coming out soon. Both books are packed with practical tips and encouragement.
We also have a free novel revision checklist to help you with that second draft. The link to that is in the description.
And if you'd like to talk to us about our book, head off to alkirapublishing.com. We always like to talk to authors who are concerned about quality.
Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.